Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Seth.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
We are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
We are the Classic Gaming Brothers. So Zach, how's things been? It's been forever since we've last talked.
It's been so long. Things have been well. Time has changed, and the beat of the drum keeps going.
Yeah, you came to my house recently and helped me put together an arcade cabinet.
Yes, and then we played some video games.
That's right. And one of the video games we played was X-Men: Children of the Atom. It's an arcade game that was produced by Capcom and released on the CP System 2 arcade hardware in 1994 in Japan and 95 in North America and Europe. So X-Men: Children of the Atom is based on the X-Men comic book, hence the name X-Men: Children of the Atom. It's the first fighting game that was produced by Capcom using characters under the license from Marvel Comics. It was released around the time of the mid-1990s, and guess what was also going on? The X-Men animated series during the mid-1990s. The game features voice actors from the X-Men series reprising their roles. The game's plot's based on the Fatal Attraction storyline from the comics, and you play one of the X-Men or the enemies, and you fight against Magneto. It's a fighting game, so you face each other in best of 3 one-on-one fighting matches, and then finally, if you're doing the story, you battle all the way to Juggernaut and then Magneto, who is the ultimate boss in everything. Anyway, yeah, so the X-Men: Children of the Atom is a great game. The sprites are large, the X-Men fighting is fun, and I'm playing it on my new Arcade 1-Up Deluxe X-Men 97 arcade cabinet.
Children of the Atom is a great looking game too. Like, it's got really fluid animations, and like the sprites are nice and colorful and big. Like the Juggernaut sprite is awesome. It's this just massive hulking figure that takes up most of the screen sort of deal. It's a solid Capcom game.
Interestingly enough, in X-Men: Children of the Atom, Juggernaut's wearing pants, which, to be fair, he doesn't always wear pants. So Zach, what have you recently been playing?
Seth, recently I've been playing Saturday Night Slam Masters, which coincidentally was also made by Capcom and released for a variety of systems, though I've been playing the Sega Genesis version. Released in 1993, Saturday Night Slam Masters is an odd sort of game because it's kind of like a Street Fighter 2 style fighting game, but you play as professional wrestlers. And my favorite thing is whenever they are entering the ring, there's like pyrotechnics and lights and stuff coming up from the corner when they're walking into the ring. It's very fun. In the game, I played as a wrestler named Titanic Tim, who's an English wrestler, and then I quickly got pinned down by the first person you fight. I then played as El Stingray, who's very tiny, but very fast, and I did a lot better against the first wrestler, who I forget his name, but he was a big guy. And it's pretty much like a Capcom-style fighting game. It's 1v1. Another difference, though, is unlike in Street Fighter, which is kind of on a 2D plane, you can move up and down in the ring, and you can also climb outside of the ring, though it triggers a timer, so you can't stay out there the whole time. But while you're outside of the ring, you can grab things. So you can grab like chairs or like a speaker or like a box, and you can like hit your opponent with that. So it really does feel like a professional wrestling game with kind of a Capcom twist in that there are different moves that you need to learn. You know, you can pull off combos and stuff like that, or special moves. Like El Stingray can kind of do like an M. Bison spin that's kind of like mixed with a Hadouken in that like he has like a flaming glow to him. Another cool thing is that instead of KOing your enemy like you would in a Street Fighter game, you have to pin your enemy. So after you fought them, they might lie on the ground for a bit, and then you have to do kind of a button combo to pin them. And that's how you trigger the round end, which is kind of neat because that actually gives you the opportunity, if you're really low in health, to get back up and maybe finish the round, you know, maybe take the upper hand. And it really kind of changes the fairness, I think, of the game. One of the things I hate about Street Fighter is your opponent will sometimes be just as low as you are in health, and then they just get that one extra hit in and they knock you out, and it's just such a disappointing feeling. With Saturday Night Slam Masters, that doesn't always have to happen because sometimes you can escape the pin if you're fast enough. So it's pretty cool. Another thing I liked about the game is Mike Haggar is in it, as in the character from Final Fight. And in Final Fight, Mike Haggar is the mayor. This is supposed to be before he's the mayor, but I like to pretend that he's still the mayor. He's also just a professional wrestler.
I also like that in Japan, Saturday Night Slam Master is known as Muscle Bomber, the Body Explosion.
It is, and that's the best name ever. The Body Explosion is such a good name.
What I like is that the Body Explosion is such a good secondary, like a byline. It's a great byline.
It is.
It's primarily called the Muscle Bomber, but also, don't forget, Body Explosion.
You know, the Body Explosion would be a good name for a professional wrestler.
That's true. I think it would be.
Completely unrelated. To get into today's episode, we're going to be doing another lore episode, as you could have told by the title. So previously, we've covered the lore behind the Sonic games, behind the Fallout factions. We talked about the Brotherhood of Steel. We talked about the aliens of Mass Effect. And this week, we're going to dive into the lore of the story of the game's Doom for two reasons. One is that I was recently replaying Doom Eternal, and I was like, man, the lore in this game is really dense. I need to write it down. So I wrote it down just because I felt like it. And then I was like, oh, this is basically an episode. So I just turned it into an episode. But the other reason is that it's actually Doom 2's 30th anniversary. It came out in 1994. It's 2024, 30 years ago. So that's pretty cool, and Doom 2 is a great game, and it's, I think, the perfect time to talk about the lore of Doom. Now, before we begin, I'm going to go through just a couple of housekeeping notes. Note number one, per the game's own co-creator, John Carmack, Doom's plot was always considered secondhand, in the sense that John Carmack is even quoted as saying, story in a game is like a story in a porn movie. It's expected to be there, but it's not that important. So because of this, we're going to have to incorporate a bit of retcon lore and some fan theories. At least like how fans have interpreted the lore. Point number two is that Doom is a pretty violent game. If you are not a fan of violence and you never played Doom, just bear that in mind. And point number three is that we're going to be doing a little bit of spoilers for Doom Eternal and the Ancient Gods Parts 1 and 2. However, we're going to keep some of the bigger twists a secret, so these games can still be enjoyable. We're not really spoiling anything too major, just kind of like things that you learn through like plot points and stuff like that. Nothing like major twist wise. So just a couple of points to be aware of. If you don't want those games spoiled for you, then maybe go back and listen to another episode of ours this week. Anyway, let's talk about the lore of Doom. Ages before any of the games actually took place, there was a lifeless planet called Argent Denur, which crashed into a massive crystal called the World Spear. This crystal unleashed creatures called wraiths, who seeded the planet and life began to form. Some of this life included plants and animals, but also humans, and these massive beings called ancestrals. As time progressed, the humans of Argent Denur began to become more advanced, building large castles and cathedrals. A warrior society was born that venerated and worshipped the wraiths and their abilities. Under the guidance of Omero, the first king of the newly formed Kingdom of Argenta, the Night Sentinels were created to protect the wraiths, and the priests of the Order Diag worshipped the wraiths. Fun fact, Omero is just one letter off from Romero, who created Doom. That's fun.
And deliberate.
Now, the Night Sentinels would swear fealty to the Kingdom of Argenta, and in turn offered protection to the land against any conflict that arose. At some point in their history, the Kingdom of Argenta met the Makers, an advanced race from the realm of Urdak. The Makers took on the appearance of angelic beings, often wearing golden wings with white robes, though their true appearance was more insect in nature. So when the Makers aren't wearing their helms or their outfits, they're kind of these purple, multi-eyed insects. They just like to take on the appearance of angels. After the Makers arrived, the people of Argenta began to worship them, and they treated them as gods. The Order Diag also shifted their beliefs, and instead of worshiping the wraiths, began to worship the Makers, and would begin to preach and venerate the Makers. And specifically, they would worship the power of the Khan Maker, the supreme ruler of Urdak. At some point, the Night Sentinels would discover a man, cast out of time and space, who they called the Outlander, and this man would later be called the Doomslayer.
Now, to go over to our guy, the Doomslayer, also known as Doom Guy, in not the too distant future from our time, the Union Aerospace Corporation, or UAC, has stationed themselves on Phobos, Deimos, and Mars itself. Part of their research has been into teleportation, something that the military has been incredibly interested in exploring because teleporting is useful, especially in military operations, so they want to be able to do it. Now on Mars, a Marine had been stationed in a mostly quiet section of one of the research facilities as a punishment for assaulting a superior officer after he was ordered to fire on civilians. He didn't, and thus they said, you can go guard the broom closet. On Mars, ethics don't apply. At his station, it's reported that something is going on at the facilities on Phobos and Deimos seemingly vanishes from space, and being a moon, that's bad. The Marine joined a combat force and traveled to Phobos. He's ordered to secure the perimeter and is given a pistol as defense. If you haven't picked up yet, the Marine who refused to fire on the civilians is and would be Doom Guy. The Marines team moves out and never returns to him, where he just has a pistol. Assuming that something terrible has occurred, the Marine makes his way to find out what happens, only to be greeted by the reincarnated zombies of an assault force. Shooting through them and making his way through the research base, he soon encounters other creatures like imps and cacodemons. He realizes that the invasion that they are fighting off is not in fact with aliens, nor with other corporations, but in fact with Hell itself. Now, the Marine stood alone against the forces of Hell, pushing them back as he could, until he entered Hell and killed the Spider Mastermind, the genius controller of Hell. He returns from Hell and arrives on Earth to find that it has been infested by demons. The planet has been overrun and everything. Billions died in the invasion, including the Marine's wife, child, and his pet rabbit, Daisy. The most important loss.
It is. In Doom Eternal, he has Daisy's foot, but he doesn't have a picture of his wife or child.
No, Daisy is life. With this loss, the Marine becomes consumed with anger and the need for revenge, and fought back the demons once more. He returned to Hell and destroyed the Icon of Sin, closing the portal from Hell to Earth. After the Marines' defeat of the Icon of Sin, the planetary government of Earth established a new policy that all UAC research facilities needed to be quarantined and bombarded with radiation. Years would pass and the facilities would remain empty, though one day a satellite sends a signal back to Earth about the detection of an entity. Once again, the Marine, or Doom Guy, is called again to eradicate the growing threat and falls into the trap that is set by Mother Demon, a supreme creature who seeks revenge on the Marine for killing all the previous demon people that were in charge of Hell. She's like, why are you killing them all?
Yeah, I mean, Hell gets a lot of supreme people because Doom Guy tends to kill them.
Yeah, they gotta replace them somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the Marine arrives back in Hell and defeats the Mother Demon. The Mother Demon's sister then sends the Marine back to the moon of Phobos, and now he must travel back to Hell to defeat her. Doom Guy just gets sent around. Poor guy. He's like, finally back in Hell, finally did what I need to do. Now I'm back on Phobos. Finally, he defeats the Mother Demon's sister, the Resurrector, and the Marine decides that finally he's going to rest, for Hell has been stopped. He also chooses at this point that he's going to remain in Hell, as he knows that his loved ones are gone and there's no place for him on Earth, and Earth no longer feels like home, so he just stays in Hell. Now, later, the Night Sentinels discover the Marine at the gates of Hell. He's been brought to madness, speaking only about destroying the demons. In fact, he can barely form full sentences at this point. He's just saying rip and tear over and over again.
Kill them. Must kill them all.
He has fight in him yet.
The priests of the Order of Diag were impressed by the resilience of the Marine, so they decided that they were going to put him through some grueling tests and trials within something they called the Blood Arena, mostly to see just how powerful this guy was. And powerful he was, because the Marine stood against countless foes pitted against him and survived each and every encounter, seemingly always desiring more combat. So he would beat an enemy and he would just say,
They are everywhere. Must kill them all.
And they would just keep sending guys at him. The people of Argenta soon became fans of the Marine because they had some free entertainment to watch. And the con maker believed that his combat experience meant he would do well in their military. So the Marine was trained and would fight on the front lines as Hell and Argent Denor entered into a war. Now, King Novik, the current king of Argenta, was impressed by the Marine as well. So King Novik allowed the Marine to be inducted into the Night Sentinels, though the other Sentinels disapproved of an outsider being part of their order. The Marine proved himself time and time again and was embraced by the order. Later, Hell had unleashed the Dreadnought against the people of Argent Denor. The Dreadnought was a Titan, a massive creature who was capable of wiping out like entire buildings with just a sweep of its hand. The demons of hell began to overwhelm the Sentinels, so the Seraphim, a maker scientist, began to make his own plans to stop the Dreadnought. For clarification, the Seraphim was not just any scientist, as he didn't just serve the Khan Maker, something that's unique amongst makers, as makers tend to have a hive mind. The Seraphim acted sometimes against the Khan Maker and was considered a heretic, because the Seraphim originally served the Father, the creator of all existence. Prior to the rise of the Khan Maker, the Seraphim helped the Father stop the Dark Lord of Hell, Devoth. The Father didn't kill Devoth, being unable to destroy his own creation, and instead reduced Devoth and himself into essences as a way to contain their power. With the Father gone and the Khan Maker now in power, the Seraphim would become the Khan Maker's chancellor.
The Seraphim would go on to approach the Marine and brought him to something called the Divinity Machine. The machine blessed the Marine with speed and strength. Using the Crucible, a blade only to be wielded by a Sentinel King, the Marine was able to single-handedly take down the Dreadnought and plunge the blade into the beast's heart. The Sentinels knew at this point that they needed to give this Marine a name, and so he became Doom Guy. Or, well, the Doomslayer. The Doomslayer became a frontline fighter in the war against Hell, helping the Night Sentinels gain a deeper access to the various levels of Hell itself. As Hell's forces were pushed back further and further within their own realm, the Makers discovered the true power of Hell, Hell's essence, brought to you by Chanel, aka the purified souls of the damned. Fun fact, after a soul had been removed from a body, the empty husk will soon change into one of the demons of hell. The Slayer would be unaware that the Makers began to construct factories within Hell to harvest this essence, as he really didn't care because he's Doom Guy. And the Khan Maker struck a deal in secret with the forces of Hell to provide them souls for the purpose of gathering the Hell's essence, which the Khan Maker used to produce their own energy called Argent Energy. The truth was revealed, and the Night Sentinels opposed the Khan Maker, entering a civil war against the Makers in Argenta. The Order of Daag would command that the Doomslayer and the Night Sentinels travel to Hell on a strategic mission. However, it was a ruse, and the priests of the Order had actually formed an alliance with the Khan Maker. The Night Sentinels and the Doomslayer were trapped in Hell and abandoned. The Night Sentinels soon fell, one by one, with the Doomslayer and another Sentinel named Valen being the only ones that remained. Valen, however, would betray the Sentinels and his oath when one of the priests of the Order, now calling themselves Hell Priests, offered him the chance to resurrect his son, in exchange for access to the powers of the Wraiths. Valen's betrayal led to the fall of Argent D'Nor, and Hell had won, and Valen, now as the betrayer, exiled himself. For insult to injury, Valen's son was resurrected as the new icon of sin.
Yeah, kind of like a monkey paw deal. He was like, I want my son to come back, and his son came back as a giant monster. Now, the Slayer would continue his wrath against Hell, leading the demons to fear him. The demons actually would come up with their own myths about the Slayer. Instead of killing him, the demons were able to lead him into a temple and imprison him within a sarcophagus that was then frozen in time. Also, something I want to make note of is that, for all intents and purposes, Doomslayer fights this war for eons. However, when he was discovered at the gates of Hell, time works differently with dimensions. So, like, even though he technically is from our future, he was in the past. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. Doom Guy is just, he is.
Now, back in our world, or maybe another universe, who knows, in the year of 2095, the UAC had been continuing to survey the Martian surface and discovered a fissure in the planet that leaked Argent Energy. In 2096, the UAC had set up a plant on Mars to harvest Argent Energy, and it became the main source of energy for all of human civilization. During their research, the UAC also became aware of what Argent Energy truly was: purified souls of the damned from Hell. But they chose to keep that a secret at the behest of their chairman, Samuel Hayden. Hayden himself was a mysterious figure. He was born in New York to a wealthy family and had an unmatched intellect that led him to enter into the fields of thermodynamics, nuclear science, and electromagnetic theory at a young age. He also founded the Samuel Hayden Foundation, a program that sponsored funding for scientific programs in school. And viewers like you, thank you. At some point, Hayden developed severe brain cancer. To avoid death, he transferred the parts of his brain that were unaffected into a robotic body, which also allowed him to become immortal. Hayden, having been recruited by the UAC prior to his cancer, was appointed to the project director of the Argent facility and personally led the way for Argent energy to become a staple to human life. Hayden also created Vega, an AI that would help with the research and management of the facility. One member of the team at the UAC that Hayden brought aboard was Olivia Pierce, no relation, who acted as head director of the UAC's Lazarus Project. The project was tied to the discovery of the Helix Stone, a relic from Hell, that Pierce revered and soon began to worship. She created a cult within the UAC that worshipped both Hell and the Helix Stone.
Kind of like the Helix Stone from Pokemon. At some point, another relic was retrieved from Hell, a sarcophagus containing the Doom Slayer and his armor. Hayden helped revive the Slayer, just as Olivia Pierce formed a contract with the Hell priest Deag Raynak that led to the invasion from Hell. The Doom Slayer, now awoken, has one goal: destroy demons. And destroy them he does, as he once again makes his way through the UAC. So essentially, they're like, we found this guy who's a murderer of all demons, and they were working with demons, and they're like, we should wake him up. And then they're like, oh, he's killing us.
Oh no.
Oh no. Eventually, Doomguy stumbles upon Samuel Hayden, who instructs the Doomslayer to dismantle the Argent supply units to prevent Pierce from permanently ripping a portal open to Hell. The Doomslayer, despite Hayden's protests, destroys the Argent supply units. One thing important to note, if it wasn't obvious, is that Doomslayer does not really care about humanity. When provided with the options to save humanity or kill demons, he will basically always kill demons. He will not kill innocent civilians, but he will often push them aside if they stand in his way, because he loves killing demons the most.
Like, Hayden, when you go up to the devices, Hayden's voice in the game is like, now carefully dismantle these, and the Doomguy just punches them until they break.
We're only temporarily disabling the tower. You need to remove each lens individually. Carefully release the hinges.
Warning. Energy contamination detected.
Destroying the production of Argent energy isn't necessary.
Yeah, well, Doomguy doesn't know what careful means. After destroying the Argent units, the Doomslayer is sent to Hell and back before finally confronting Pierce, who transforms into a new spider mastermind. Defeating her with his trusty BFG 9000, the Doomslayer is locked away by Samuel Hayden, who plans to release him when needed, and needed he is, because 14 years later, the Khan Maker and the Hell Priests begin an invasion of Earth using the entire Hell army. The Doomslayer by this time has become a legend to the people of Earth, many of whom believe him to be a savior. Possessed UAC staff begin a propaganda campaign to delegitimize the Doomslayer, and also to provide a positive spin on the invading demons, who they call mortally challenged.
Do not run from our mortally challenged guests. Be a good host to our new friends.
The Doomslayer now resides in a floating satellite of Maker design and travels to hunt down the Hell Priests and finally destroying the Khan Maker using any means necessary. And that is now leading into Doom Eternal.
And from there, you play Doom Eternal and then the Ancient Gods. And a lot of the story that we talked about Argent Noir, that's all revealed in the Ancient Gods. So we won't talk about any of the major spoilers. There's some things that you learn about Samuel Hayden, I will say, and some things you learn about Vega, the AI, I will say. Now, that's not just the only story about Doom, though, because there are some other timelines. To some, Doom 3, which came out 20 years ago in 2004, is set in an alternate timeline to the story that we just described earlier. It's largely due to the way that the story unfolds in Doom 3, which seems to ignore the events of Doom and Doom 2. In the game, you play as an unnamed space marine who arrives at the UAC's Martian base as part of a routine rotation of units, so you're not being punished for anything. When you get there, you're told that you are relieving soldiers on duty who are being sent back to Earth. Upon arrival, you also meet Master Sergeant Thomas Kelly, who instructs you to go to a lab to find some scientists who have gone missing. When you get to that location, you do meet a scientist who is trying to warn the UAC that another scientist, Dr. Malcolm Betrager, has aligned himself with Hell and is using the UAC's teleportation technology to summon an invading force. And then demons arrive, and and you gotta fight them. So it's slightly different storyline. It doesn't have any of the Argentinor stuff or anything like that. That's all stuff from Doom Eternal and Doom 2016. Doom 3 has its own thing going on. Another variation of the storyline, though, is featured in Doom, the 2005 movie. In this film, Carl Urban plays a Marine named John Grimm, who is the Doom guy, and is accompanying a squad led by Sergeant Asher Mahonen, played by Dwayne The Rock Johnson, to the UAC facility on Mars to investigate a distress call sent by Dr. Carmack, the facility's lead researcher. Upon arrival, the team learns that the UAC has been conducting genetic experiments, and a viral outbreak has begun to spread through the facility. The outbreak turns people into zombies, and sometimes mutates them into large creatures. Hell is not involved.
At a distant research facility, the final 10% of the human genome has just been discovered. And with it, all hell has broken loose.
Another movie came out, though, Doom Annihilation, which features a similar plot of a group of Marines going to a UAC facility, but instead of a distress call, they are being stationed there due to their lieutenant, a woman named Joan Dark, and her failure to follow through with a mission. So kind of like the original story of Doom Guy punching a superior, but this time Doom Guy is Doom Girl, and his name is a reference to Joan of Arc. Anyway, the facility that they are going to is home to teleportation technology called the Gate, which was discovered by the UAC, and they also found it was connected to a structure on Earth. When you enter the Gate, a person turns into a zombie, and then demons arrive. This time they're from hell. So one Doom movie is about a disease, the other Doom movie is about hell. They're both pretty bad movies.
I don't think I've actually seen either of them.
I have one of them on DVD.
Nice. Is it the one with Dwayne The Rock Johnson?
Sure is.
Well, there is a point of debate within the Doom fandom that is the name of the Doom Slayer. In games, he generally goes unnamed because most of the people he deals with are demons, and they don't say, "Hey, how are you?" before they get shot. So they're usually referenced, if anything, as Marine, Doom Guy, or Doom Slayer. And the novel's written by Daffodad Hube. He is given the name of Flynn Taggart, which sounds like a Star Trek officer, but he's portrayed as a young officer who, like in the plot of the first game, assaults a superior officer in his station on Phobos for his insubordination. In other sources, he's part of the Blazkowicz lineage, being a direct descendant of the American World War II hero B.J. Blazkowicz. In Wolfenstein RPG, this is strongly alluded to as you fight a demon called the Harbinger of Doom. After defeating the demon, it is left missing its arm and legs, heavily implying it will be reborn as the cyber demon that you fight in the Doom RPG. The current canon references the Taggart name, but not in direct connection to the Slayer. Rather, it is the name of a comic company that publishes comic books that the Slayer collects and keeps in his room.
Yeah, the Slayer has a lot of toys and comics in his room.
Yeah, it's a lot of collectibles because the game has a lot of collectibles.
That's basically the Doom lore. It's just something that I had in my mind and I wanted to get onto paper, and then I realized it was probably good enough to be an episode. And hopefully you thought so too. Certainly, Doom is a bizarre game, and it's a game that doesn't need to have a plot, but it does, and I'm grateful for that because the plot is silly.
Yeah. For sure.
Getting into our retro rewinds, Seth had me play The Uncanny X-Men for the NES. Released in 1989 and published by LJN, The Uncanny X-Men is not only one of the first X-Men games, it's also bad. A fun fact about it is apparently it's not entirely sure who developed the game, as apparently the developer was undisclosed by LJN. So there are some guesses as who developed the game, but no one knows for sure and no one's fessing up. You play as either Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, or Iceman. Fun fact, they all look identical, except some of them are different colors. So like Cyclops is blue and yellow, Wolverine is brown and red. I played as Cyclops, and the computer partner played as Storm, because you have to play with two players. So if you're playing as someone, the computer plays as someone, no matter what. So the computer played as Storm, and you walk around from a top-down perspective, and a bunch of things attack you. All the characters, as mentioned, kind of look the same, kind of hard to distinguish them. Cyclops, he shoots lasers. That's what he does. That's just the only thing he does. He also jumps, but I couldn't find a use for the jump. Anyway, I played through a practice stage, and then I couldn't figure out how to leave the practice stage. So I reset the game. Then I loaded another stage, because you can just pick any stage. It's the stage select is automatically unlocked. So I just picked the next stage, and I got overwhelmed and killed very quickly. It's not a good game. It's kind of bad. My favorite thing, though, is that the computer doesn't know what it's doing. So sometimes Storm would just wander away, and then she would come back, and then she would wander away again, and then she would just shoot shoot the wall. Anyway, it's a bad game, and other people thought so too. For example, the AVGN did a video based on this game because it's not fun. Next week, Seth, you can play Wolverine Adamantium Rage for the Super Nintendo.
Now, Zach had me play Magic Sword Heroic Fantasy, released in 1990 by Capcom. Magic Sword Heroic Fantasy is a hack and slash for both the arcade and the SNES. Zach asked me to play the SNES version, so that's what I did. The game is a lot like Golden Axe in the sense that it's a hack and slash game where you play as buff dudes with swords and loincloths. One difference, however, is the game is played on a two-dimensional plane as opposed to the semi-3D plane that Golden Axe has. Another neat thing is that you recruit other characters to assist you along the way, which definitely helps fight off hordes of monsters. The game is fast-paced, colorful, and a lot of fun, and I think it holds up. Next week, Zach, you could play Wiz and Liz, stylized as Wiz N apostrophe Liz for the Sega Genesis. Thank you for listening to this episode. Hopefully you appreciated the fun episode about the Doom lore. I think we're going to be doing a couple of lore episodes, as we mentioned before in the Kid Nicky episode. This is one of them. So if you like these type of episodes, feel free to write into us and send us email, and you can do that to classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. You can also follow us on social media. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch are all at Classic Gaming Brothers, and our Twitter is CG Brothers Pod, and I think it's also our Blue Sky ID as well. Anyway, you can follow us on those. If you like the show, you can always give us a rating on whatever podcast application you're listening to this on, and those can be such things such as Spotify, iTunes, or I was going to say Stitcher, but Stitcher is gone, or YouTube now. And you can feel free to give us a subscribe over on YouTube because we had to migrate because Google Podcast went away. Anyway, feel free to follow us and like us and do all those things. Tell 3 of your friends. Finally, I think that's going to be it. Zach, am I missing anything?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Zach.
And I've been Seth.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's
right.
Right.